All right, everybody. So here's the 1995 Mustang that I bought back in 2012. This was a decent car, 302 automatic car. It was in fair shape. I just got some pictures of it here so I could show it to you. Here is a picture of it after it was cleaned up a little bit and I got a different set of wheels on it. It was a decent car and I really wanted to do a build with it. But there was a lot of problems with it. The car was all over the road. You could hardly drive it. Here's a picture of the new brakes that I put on the car. First thing I had to do, just bought some stuff off of Rock Auto and spent the day doing the front brakes. The front end was really messed up. Here I mounted the front wheel and was sort of doing a backyard way of checking the camber on the car, and it was way out. I did a few things to try to correct that. Here I'm putting in some urethane bushings on the strut towers there just to stiffen things up. Every little thing that I did with the suspension with this car helped. And that was a major improvement amongst other things I did. Next, these projector headlamps that the original owner had on the car, you could not see at night. The lights were not bright enough. So I went out and I got a set of Cobra, brand new Cobra lenses and side marker lights for the car. Big improvement. The stock wheels were cracked. Here's a picture of them. The tires wouldn't hold air. I went out and got these bullet wheels, but they were an S197. They didn't really fit quite right, but I needed to put some spacers and they were okay. I then went out and got a set of Takiko Blues for it. I put them in. And also I installed a set of Mach 1 springs from a 2004 Mach 1. Here you can see the difference between the stock spring and the Mach 1 spring for the front. There they are installed in the car with the brakes, and things were starting to look good. The car was starting to drive better, and the stock engine was tired, and I needed to get it out. And I really wanted to put a big 408 in it, and I found this on Craigslist. Here it is. 392 stroker motor, A392 engine. I got it from a guy off of Craigslist, and here's the heads that were still in the box. A guy from Craigslist was selling the engine. He had a Cobra build, you know, like a Shelby Cobra, AC Cobra Super Performance, I think it was. He wanted to put this 392 in the Cobra, but then things started to change for him, and he decided to sell a motor. I really wanted to put this motor in the car. You can see it's just about 4 inches in stroke. The motor was brand new, never taken out of the box. Here are some pictures that I have of it on the engine stand. All of my friends were shocked that I picked this thing up. I got it for about $1,500. It was a steal. And here again, I just took a lot of pictures of this engine because it was really something that was really unbelievable that I got this kind of a deal on this engine. Here's a picture of one of the heads still in the box, still in the plastic. I put them up on the bench and took a bunch of pictures of them. These were X heads. They were not really that good a head for the day when I bought this package. AFR heads were out. There was a lot better heads out. I started to collect the parts that I needed to get the car and the engine in the car. Here's an intake manifold, 351 style EFI intake manifold. I think it was a Pro Compass, something like that. I picked that up cheap on Craigslist. Here's a picture of the elbow that you needed with a 70mm throttle body. And I also went out and got these shorty headers for a Fox body that would fit that car. Here's a distributor from a late Ford van with a steel gear on it that would work with the ECU. Melling oil pump, 351. Here's a picture of the oil pump. Just getting everything together that I needed. Here's a set of 30-pound injectors that I had picked up that probably would have been good enough to run that engine. I really wasn't going to cam it that much. And the car was really starting to come together. You could see it's a pretty nice looking car. Like I say, 302 with an automatic. You didn't really see them all that much, you know? And so I was really hot to build this car and put that big motor in it. But I was also eyeballing some other things because at the time, this was 2012 when I was doing this. And these are the kinds of cars that were coming out. Look at this 2012 Mustang. Coyote power. You know, so part of me really wanted to do the pushrod thing, but the Coyotes were in the back of my mind. So as I was putting the parts together to put this 95 together, I changed course and I decided not to do the 392. and I bought this, a GT40P motor out of a 2001 Mercury Mountaineer. Very low mileage engine. Here's some pictures of it. This engine was sitting in the junkyard for many years, and finally I was able to pick this engine up for 500 bucks. This engine had something like 2,000 miles on it. It was a great candidate for this 95 Mustang. So I have all of these pictures here that I'm going to show you what the engine looked like as I was tearing it down. You can see the GT40P intake manifold on it. I was going to use that in the Mustang, right? You can see the lower manifold with the port spacing, and it was a very low mileage, clean engine. It just had been sitting in the junkyard for a very long time. There you can see the 4 bars on the heads, showing that they're GT40P heads. You know, these P motors, really, it's too bad that they didn't come out earlier and possibly ended up in the Mustangs. They never did. They were more powerful than the E7TE heads that were on the Mustang GTs at the time. But you can see here the engine's clean. You can see the bottom end. It was perfectly clean. And as I tore it down to the short block, you could see this was a good candidate to put in the car. And so I wanted to change a few things, right? So here's what the valley of the engine looks like. And you can see one of the things that makes this different. You see there's no dog bones. The hold down brackets usually go to dog bones. This P motor just had these plastic pieces in there. You can see them there. There's a good shot of it right there. You can see that it doesn't have the regular dog bones. It's just got these plastic pieces. Here's the valve spring remover that I got from Harbor Freight. And I proceeded to change the valve springs. Here I am pulling the first ones. Here's the valve spring kit that I got. They were drop-in valve springs with the retainers, and everything that you need to change the valve springs, seals, and everything. And there's a better picture of everything there. These were the springs that I needed for the cam I wanted to use. There you can see I put the checking springs on there because you need to check every single one before you proceeded to change the springs. And it was very specific. You had to be careful not to mix up the intake springs with the exhaust springs and the retainers because they were different. And here you can see I'm checking them, I'm pulling them. You'll notice in some of these pictures that there's a fuel line sticking in the spark plug hole. There it is right there. I would run that fuel line in there and pull that cylinder up to top dead center and pull the spring. And, that would stop the spring from dropping in the cylinder. There it is right there. And there's the new seals. So it was a fun build. I had a good time. There I'm putting the new seals on the valves. And one by one, you can see I put some tape on the valve to stop it from dropping into the cylinder as I went to the next cylinder. That spring remover didn't work very well. I had to actually zip tie it on there so it would hold. And I could pull them off. But there they are. Tape holding the valves up. Got all the springs off. And I was ready to put the valve springs on. But before I did that, I had to put the cam in. And here's the cam, XE274 cam. It was a decent cam for the engine. I didn't want to over cam it. I wanted to make high torque with this cam. And this cam did deliver. It made some good power in this combination. So here is the cam going in the motor. The lifters were lifted up out of the way, and we slid the cam into the motor. She went in very easily. Here's a picture of the cam in with the timing chain on. This is the timing chain that came out of the engine. Did not have very much slack in the chain. It looked perfect, so I put it on. Here's the tool that I bought to check the valve spring height. All right, and there we begin putting the valve springs in. A couple pictures of the checking springs. I made myself a little gauge right there so that I can go from one to the other. And one by one, we installed the drop-in valve springs on each valve. Put the fuel line in the cylinder, brought it up to top dead center on each one, and installed the springs from one cylinder to the next until they were all done. And here you could see them. I took a lot of pictures because that's what I did back then. Didn't do a lot of video back then. It was all about pictures. I really wasn't on YouTube. I wasn't doing anything like this. But there's me as a bricklayer using my level to check the spring heights across the cylinder, across all the valves, and they all checked out pretty good. Very, very little variance. we moved over to the next cylinder bank. We did the same thing. One by one, we changed all the valve springs. It worked out very well, actually. We're putting the fuel line in there and holding the valves up. We went and changed every valve spring. So the drop-in valve springs were made for the cam, the right pressures, the right height. Everything worked out pretty good. And I got the dog bones that I needed. I didn't use those plastic pieces. I went and got some dog bones from a friend, and it started to take shape as a hybrid engine, as I called it. There you can see the dog bones. And it was a nice little package, not the 392 that I wanted to put in, but it was fun. I had a good time the year that I did this. This was back in late 2012 when I actually did this build. So a little 302, and we proceeded to pull the old engine out of the car. There's a picture of the old motor coming out. There's another blurry picture that I took. Didn't get a lot of pictures of this. It's a frustrating thing. There you could see earlier with this car, I changed the transmission, and it had a converter, a 2800 stall converter with a rebuilt transmission. And that made it pretty good with the GT40P motor that I put in a little later on. Here's a picture of the motor getting out. What a relief that was to get that motor out of there. There was like 200,000 miles on this motor. Wasn't really very dirty, but it was tired. It was a tired old motor, and it was good to get it out of the car. And there it is laying on the ground, and it was just good to get past this part of the build and move on to some new things. Now here are some of the parts I bought for the new motor. These are GT40P headers, specifically made for the SN95 with the 302. You can see the riser for the EGR tube in that header right there. There's a rare picture of me putting some things together. I think I'm putting the oil pump in the motor at that point. And there it is. I got the oil pump on, and we're proceeding to put the parts from the other motor on. There's the pickup coming out of the GT motor going on the P motor. Took some time to clean that oil pan, but we got that on there too. And there's a couple of shots of what it looked like as the new motor started to take shape. It was a lot of fun. I got to say, I really enjoyed doing this. Here's a look at the front of the motor now, and the cam is in, and we're just getting ready to put the intake manifold on. There I am getting ready to set the lower manifold on it. Just a few pictures of it from a few different angles. Like I say, you can see the dog bones, and there's another shot of what the gaskets look like on the intake boards. Lower manifold on, timing chain cover on, water pump on, right? Stock valve covers went on. Everything's starting to take shape and look pretty good. Here's a good view of the GT40P headers. I mocked them up for clearance to make sure nothing interfered, but there was interference right there. The header was hitting the block, so I had to clearance that out, right? And then here's a picture of the header with the EGR passage tube there, or hookup for the tube. There's the harmonic balancer and the timing pointer, every little detail I took pictures of. Here's a picture of the EGR riser tube hooked up, and it went on perfectly. The location of that port on the headers was perfect. These were Mac headers, I believe, and they worked excellent. I wasn't trying to make a ton of power with this thing, so the shorty headers worked. They hooked right up to my off-road pipe that I had on the car. Here's a picture of the engine installed in the car. Here's another picture of it. I don't have any video of this except for this one little clip of what it was like for this engine to run. So check it out. Listen to it right here. So as it turned out, guys, the build worked out perfectly. A guy named Willie from Dirty Dirty Racing actually did the tuning for me, and he was able to email me some tunes, and I could burn my SCT chip, and we got the car really running good. I remember back then I used to race Gen 5 Camaros on the street. A lot of the guys that had the Camaros didn't even know what this car was. I couldn't actually beat those Camaros, but I could hang with them, and I had some fun. I really did have a lot of fun with this car. But all the time, I was eyeballing cars like this. This 2012 Mustang GT, this is when the Coyotes were really taking hold, and I ended up actually buying that car. There you can see it only had 7,200 miles on it. Super low mileage Coyote car, premium with a stone interior. It was an automatic car. I think this car was owned by a girl, uh, was well taken care of. I got a good deal on it. It cost me about 2,500 bucks. There you can see on the driveway with my 95. The 95 became a daily driver. Slowly, I started to give up on the idea of playing around with the old pushrod motors, and I started to think Coyote. So I drove the 95 around for a year or so, and kept this 2012 in the garage, right? And it was a beautiful car. Here's a picture of the motor. It had the strut tower brace. The car had the 19-inch wheels, I believe they were at the time. A little bit of an upgrade for the car, and it was beautiful, and I really loved this 2012. There you can see this picture still had the stripe on it. There I took the stripe off. Most of the cars came at the time with the stripe delete, but this was a beautiful 2012. I had a lot of fun with it. There's a picture of it next to the Mustang. I enjoyed owning those cars at that time, but then there came a point where I got rid of the 95 and had the 2012. So, this was an experience that was a transition time for me. Here's the engine running in the 95. She ran good, and she was powerful. Lots of torque, really moved the car. And with the 2800 converter, this thing really took off the line. Surprised a lot of people, even me, considering what it was, because I really didn't put much into it. That engine, I didn't even pull the heads off. I just changed the cam and the valve springs, put the GT stuff on it, and had it tuned, and she ran good. But so that's the story, guys. This is something I did back in 2012. I had a lot of fun. Back then I wasn't on YouTube, and since then a lot of things have changed. But nowadays we don't play around with pushrod motors anymore. Now it's all about Coyotes. So that's the story, guys. This is basically marks the end of my interest in building pushrod motors. The Coyotes basically took over at this point. I really enjoyed that 95, but that's it. I'm not likely to be building a pushrod motor ever again, and I'm pretty much done with the old cars. A lot has happened since I owned that 2012. I didn't have it very long, and I had another 2012 after that that was much nicer than that one. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care.